So strength training has been shown to reduce injuries, particularly say in a muscle group like hamstrings. There are quite a lot of studies that show increasing eccentric hamstring strength can reduce muscle injuries there. And also you need control as well as strength, so both of those. If I was to pick something from this list, the biggest thing for me from an injury prevention point of view would be managing your training load well. So trying to avoid spikes in mileage if you're a distance runner, or training intensity if you run shorter distances, or again, if you're a distance runner. So you want to have a nice gradual increase over time in terms of how much training you're doing. That goes for how often you train, so the frequency of training, how far you're running, how intense the sessions are, and things like stress and psychological stress can come into training load. So, but again, that's a whole other talk in itself. But that would be one thing, particularly at the moment with the lockdown still in place. People are running an awful lot more. So if that's something you're not accustomed to, you need to be careful that you're not overdoing it. Because if your tissues aren't able to tolerate it and you're asking your body to do more than it's capable of at a given time, you're at more risk of injury. So what else can you do then? That's a relatively easy win, but really important, is optimizing your recovery and your adaptation, so from training. So optimizing nutrition, so making sure you eat enough food and timing your food intake right. So even something simple as having your carbohydrates around training is really helpful. And of course, optimizing sleep, so aiming for about 8 hours a night, has also shown to reduce injury risk. So they're all things you can do relatively easily with a little bit of thought that can help reduce injuries. But if we go back to why we're here today, we're going to talk about mobility, and I'm going to go through a practical session in a minute. This is freely available on the Athletics Ireland website. It's some work that Paul Carraher, another physio, did with Athletics Ireland and with Sport Ireland Institute a few years ago. So it's a really good mobility program that you can use, particularly if you are new to it and you would like to have something to follow in a stepwise process. It goes through most of the really important areas for anyone in running or track and field. As I say, it's easy to download in PDF, so it's something that you can follow along. It has all the instructions and pictures there, so that's really useful. So what I'm going to do today has taken some of the things from this, and I've put in a little bit more. As I say, I want to try and show you as much as I can in a short space of time in terms of how you can stretch, how we can use mobility exercises, how we can use combined movements and those kind of things to increase mobility, but in a useful way. So you're not just spending hours statically stretching and actually not seeing results. So some of it is based on this. This is sort of what I'm going to go through practically now. Probably won't stick exactly to it. And then we'll go through those questions at the end. Okay. Okay, perfect. So I think we're back to me, hopefully. And so we'll go through a little bit of the practical stuff now. Again, if anyone has questions as we go along, just let me know. Okay, so if you want to follow along, by all means do, and we're going to get started on the practical side of stuff. All you need really is a little bit of space, ideally. Thank you. All we need is a little bit of space. If you have a mat, if you have a foam roller, if you have blocks, if you have straps, perfect. But I will change things. I will give you variations of things that we do as we go. Okay, so we'll start with some spinal mobility, then we'll do a little bit through shoulders, we'll come down and do some work through hips and thighs, and then into lower legs and ankles and feet. Okay, then we'll go through our questions. So if you come onto your mat or grab yourself a little bit of space, we're going to start with some spinal work. So we're going to come onto all fours. So your hands are underneath your shoulders, your knees are underneath your hips. Okay, and we're going to start with a cat and cow. So you're going to just arch through your lower back, head all the way back up. Then we're going to arch, tucking your pelvis under, lowering down and lowering head down. Just going to take 3 seconds or so to go through each move, and then we're going to go straight into the opposite movement. So we'll do between 3 and 5 of those. So you're going as far as you comfortably can, but you don't need to force anything. So none of the movements that we do today should be forced at all. So it should be a gradual increase. And you should notice that if this is something you do start adding into your routine, that your flexibility will increase over time, your mobility will increase over time, and that the movements that you find tough at the start are not so difficult. Okay, so that's a way to get a little bit of movement, waking up the spine all the way up. Then we're going to come onto your tummy. Hands down, forearms down if you want to. We're pushing up into a cobra position. So again, trying to move through that spine, holding for 3 or 4 seconds, and then backing off. And we'll go through 3 of those again. So all the way up into extension, and all the way back down. We'll go through 2 more of those. Down and the last one. And go up as high as you can. Don't push too far, we'll play back down. And then we're going to push back into a child's pose. So bringing your bum all the way to your heels, hands staying out in front of you, and head relaxing all the way down. If you feel that's a good stretch, perfect. If not, think about reaching both arms right away from you, and then coming right down to really get a good stretch. Here, if we want to bias the left side of the lower back, we're going to bring your arms over to the right, and again stretch right back onto your heels. And then we can do the same on the opposite side. So to stretch the right side of your lower back, hands to the left, and then sit right back into the center. You feel it up through that just a little bit. Lovely. We're then going to come onto your back when you're ready. We're going to lie flat. We're going to bring one leg up and over. So you're going to bring one leg up, using the opposite arm to gently bring that to the side. So we're going all the way over. So again, this isn't a stretch. We're not holding it too long. We're going 1 or 2 seconds at the end. And then you're going to swap to the other side. Again, leg up, opposite arm over, helping you to bring that across. It's okay for your upper back to come off here. This is to try and get a little bit of movement through your entire spine without biasing any area particularly. We'll just do 1 more each side, and then we'll come into some of the more specific regions like that thoracic spine and that mid back. 1 more this side, and swapping over. So as I say, it's all about gentle movement as far as you're comfortable, but not past that. So none of this should cause any pain. A little bit of tightness, yes, that's fine, but no pain. Okay, so we're going to come into some thoracic spine work, so mid back. There are loads of different ways we can do this. What's important from a running point of view is that you're able to extend through your spine well, so that you can maintain a good upright posture, but also that you can rotate well. So when you're running, you're trying to control rotation through your body. You have to have a little bit of movement, but then you need to be able to control it. So what we'll do is we'll work on rotation first, and I'll show you some extension exercises. So we'll start off with some easy ones. We're going to come on to, again, hands and knees. We're going to use this arm underneath you, rolling all the way in, holding for 2 or 3 seconds, and coming back up. We're going to go for 3 or 4 of those on that side. To challenge you a little bit more, or actually sometimes to make the movement a little bit smoother, you can use a foam roller. So for this, the foam roller isn't for foam rolling, it's to facilitate movement. So we're going to have the roller underneath your arm or forearm, and you're going to roll all the way down. And you might just find that that's just a little bit of an easier way to get a bit of extra rotation. So we've done 4 on that side, so we're going to do the same on this side. So again, we're rolling as far as you can, and you can play around with where you have that foam roller to start with. And if you don't have the roller, that's absolutely fine, doing it as we did at the start. So this arm underneath, rolling all the way in. If I show you that from the side, it's on all 4s, and then this, we're rolling, reaching through there, and coming back up. Okay? So that's one way of doing a little bit of rotation through the mid-back. Another one that I like and use quite a bit is when we're going to come back onto onto all 4s, and then come back onto your heels. This time you're going to bring your knees a little bit further apart than normal kneeling. Okay? We're going to have one hand on the floor in front of you, the other hand behind your head, okay, but this arm is relaxed. And we're going to rotate inwards down to touch the hand. And we're going to rotate up and out as far as you can. Holding a couple of seconds, at max and come on back in and all the way up and out again. Again, let's go for a 4 through here. That's the third one. And that's the fourth one. And again, if you can use the hand that's on the ground to give you a little bit of an extra push. Okay, but again, it should be comfortable. You're not forcing the movement. We're going to swap sides. And same thing. All the way around as far as you can. Reaching down, reaching towards the ceiling. And we can just go through nice movement that way. So we're not stretching anything in particular, but we're mobilizing through that whole thoracic middle of your back. Lovely. Okay, that's pretty good. So we've worked on rotations through that mid back in a couple of different ways. As I said, extension is really important. I like to do that using a bench or a chair. Okay, so I'll show you that here. If you don't have one, you could do it using the radiator in a second. And again, there's different variations of this. So the way I tend to do it is on my elbows here. Again, you're on your knees, and then you're coming down into extension. So we're trying not to arch too much through your lower back. We're trying to keep relatively neutral here and really focus the movement on that area between the shoulder blades. So again, hold for 3 or 4 seconds, back off, and then come back down into the movement. And we'll just do one more of those. If you find that difficult, or if you don't have a chair, actually I'll show you this up here. I have a radiator here that you may or may not be able to see, but again, you can do that with your arms straight. So arms can be here, and we can come down into extension. It's a little bit of an easier way to do it if you're not used to it as well. So same type of thing, but you can use any bench or anything to hold on to. Just don't pull the radiator off the wall. That's what we're going to use today. So that's a really nice one from a thoracic spine extension point of view. What we'll do now is we'll do a little bit through shoulders, okay, because shoulders are directly related to thoracic spine, which is important. And as I say, we have a few throwers on, so we'll go through a couple of things for you guys as well. And so we'll start with some book opens, which is transitioning from, it's sort of thoracic spine work, but it's also opening up through pecs. So if you lie on your side, either side, and then we're going to have both hands behind your head. So elbows are touching here. And what we're going to do is rotate as far as you can through there and back to the start. You'll either feel this through your T-spine or through your pecs at the front, depending on where you're tightest. And again, we'll go for 4 of those. So we're going all the way around, trying to keep your legs down, trying to lengthen as much as you can through that arm. And last one. And then we'll swap to the opposite side. Lovely. So same thing, we're lying on your side, arms back through here, legs are relaxed, and we're going to rotate through that mid part of your back, really stretching that arm, reaching it down to the floor as far as you comfortably can. And we'll go for 2 more. Just a couple of seconds at the very end if we can. And then the last one. Lovely. From there, we're going to go into some lat stretching. There are different ways we can do it. What I'm going to show you first is a way to release with a foam roller, because I find that very useful. And it can be a difficult area to stretch. We'll go through some foam rolling first, and then I'll show you a stretch as well. So to foam roll through your lat, you're looking at that part just underneath your armpit. So lying on your side, foam roller under your armpit. Legs on the ground, this arm is straight but relaxed. And you're going to try and roll around just a little and find that spot that's a little bit tender. Most people will be a little bit tight through there. You're just going to hold on that and roll really gently over the area. Lats are a really important muscle for everyone, to be honest, to be able to loosen well, because your lats come from your pelvis all the way up to your shoulder blade and then into the front of your shoulder, into your arm. They span a huge area, and they are quite important for sprinters, runners in general, and particularly throwers. And so we'll do a little bit of rolling through there. And then we can repeat that on the opposite side, and we will do a little bit of a stretch then. So you can, when you're doing things yourself at home, you don't have to do everything on this list. As I say, I'm trying to show you as much as I can in a short space of time. But what you can do is find which works best for you. So for me, I would do a fair bit of foam rolling through my lats because I find it's the only way I can really get into it. But other people will find that if they do the stretch I'll show you in a minute, that's more than enough. And again, it'll be a little bit uncomfortable. But once you don't have any sharp pain or shooting. Lovely. Okay, so that's the way to roll through those lats. If we try and stretch them, I'm going to turn away from you now. And we're going to come into a lunge position, and you can try different variations of this. But essentially, we're in that lunge position, so 90-90. And I'm going to use the wardrobe here. We're going to come up into that position and stretch through here. So I have my arm crossed up over here, and I'm leaning to the side, the leg that I have down. And I really feel a good stretch through there. We're going to back off. We're going to go through 3 more of those. And really try and reach across on the last one. And then we're going to swap legs over just to go to the opposite side. So again, this leg is 90. Reaching our arm up and then over and across. And you'll feel that stretch all the way down the side. Hold for 3 seconds, back off again, and then really push into that. And then last one. Really stretch through there. Okay, lovely. So that's a little bit around the shoulders through the front and through the back. As I say, important for everyone, not just throwers. What we're going to do now is come into things around your hips. Then we'll come into thighs, and that kind of goes to our hips. And then we're going to do some stuff through foot and ankle. Okay, so we'll start off with doing a little bit of mobility, and then we'll come into a bit of stretching. So we're going to start with one leg folded behind you, the other foot resting on that thigh. So let's go with that right knee is pointing out that way. Okay, so we're going to start with mobilizing, so moving. Okay, only go as far as you're comfortable again with this. We're going to swap from this position to the opposite way, and then back around. I need to give myself a bit more space here. So we're going to go from one leg being down to the other. And we're trying to stay up as tall as you possibly can through your spine while you're doing it. If you can't get your knee to the floor, that's absolutely fine. People have different anatomical variations and different mobility levels, so it's fine, don't worry about it. So if we can only go to here, that's fine. Even work within that range, that's okay. You can play around with your foot position a little bit, so that you can find a way that's comfortable for you. What we're going to do from here is come back to that starting position and do a little bit of a combined movement or stretch. Okay, so we're going to aim to lean to the side of the foot where that knee's pointing away from you. So we're going to bring this arm up. We're going to lean down to this side so that the forearm is on the ground, and we're going to stretch as far as we can. So we're stretching all the way through that lat again, but then also down into that hip, into that quad, into that leg. So we'll hold that for 3 or 4 seconds. You're going to come up to the starting position and then reach up to the ceiling as far as you can with that hand. And then we're going to go down again. So forearm to the ground, reaching over with the opposite arm. If you find that easy, what you can think about doing is bringing your chest down to the floor. We're really adding in a bit of rotation stretch there. Back up to the top, hand up and over, and really reach up. Lovely, and we're going to try that on the opposite side again. So we're going to change legs. Again, we're going to lean towards the knee that's pointing away from you. So other arm up and over, this arm leaning to that side, really reaching as far as you possibly can there. Coming back up, swapping over, reaching up to the ceiling as high as you can. Slowly coming back down, forearm to the ground, reaching over. And again, if you want to add a little bit more stretch, rotate that body down towards the ground. Lovely. And then we'll come back up, reach up and over to the top as far as we can. And relax, lovely. All right, something's come up on my screen. Okay. So we're going to go into some specific stretching through muscle groups around hips now. So we'll do quads, hip flexors, hamstrings, and adductors at the end. We're going to come into a bit of a lunge position, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to be 90-90-ish through here. And then we're going to think about keeping your pelvis and your back in neutral, squeezing that opposite glute, and this is the leg we're stretching, the leg that's back. So if we're pushing our way forward slightly, we're stretching that hip flexor there just a little bit. Gonna hold for 3 or 4 seconds, back off, and go again. So we'll do 2 more of those. So it's only a really small movement, but if you engage your glutes here, you should feel a good stretch through there. We're going to go from there into quads. So we're going to bring this leg up behind us, holding at the ankle here. Staying up nice and tall, neutral pelvis, and you should feel that a little bit lower into that thigh. Okay, we're going to go for 3 or 4 seconds there, and we'll do that once more. So it's same position, then you bring that heel towards your bum as much as you possibly can, and then we'll relax off. We're going to go from that straight into a hamstring stretch. We're going to move this leg, so it's the opposite when we're stretching this time. We'll move that foot forward, and then lean your body right down, and think about bringing the hips away from the legs slightly. We should feel this here, but I'm ideally trying to keep a little bit of a bend in that knee. We're going to again hold for 3 or 4 seconds, back off, and then come back into the same movement as well. We'll do 1 more of those, and then again we'll swap over. So swapping legs, exact same thing. So we're about 90 degrees here, up tall through your spine. You're thinking about squeezing your glute, and we're pushing your body and your hips forward slightly. So you feel it in the leg that's behind me. So it's my left leg at the moment. Now back off. I'll do 2 or 3 more of those. So thinking about staying nice and tall. And while you're squeezing that glute, you're trying to relax the rest of your body as much as you can. So you get a good stretch to that hip flexor. And again, we're going to come into that quad. So staying in the same position. Bring that leg up behind you, holding at the ankle ideally, and really stretching through that leg. I will show you the quad stretch at the end if you find that one isn't quite getting it for you. Or if you're struggling to get that leg up behind you, you could use a towel or a band or something. Even getting to here is better than nothing. We're trying to get up to here as much as we can. Go into that last hamstring stretch here, so bring that leg slightly further away. Keeping that knee bent, lean forwards and thinking about pushing that hip back away from you. And back up. Do 2 more of those. You should really feel that in that hamstring muscle belly rather than anywhere else down the leg, so the back of that thigh. Holding for 3 or 4 seconds. And then backing off. If you find those hamstring exercises difficult, another variation, or one that you're probably a little bit more used to, is one where we're lying on your back. And this is where we can start to bring in some more active movements. So what I would call the exercise we just did are a sort of stretching. They are an active stretch rather than a passive stretch, because we're going in and out of movement, but a more dynamic movement would be something like I'll show you in a second. So we will do some normal hamstring stretches. So if we were going to passively stretch, and you can do this either using your own arms, or you can use a towel or a band or something around the foot to really stretch through here. So think about bending that leg to your chest, and then coming out this way to stretch that muscle belly. So hamstring stretches with your knee bent are quite good. If we were thinking about, there's nothing wrong necessarily with a hamstring stretch like this. It just brings a bit more of a neural element into it. I know some people were asking about stretches that are good for sciatica. So something like a movement where we tension the nerve, but only for a short period of time, are quite useful. So nerves like being moved or mobilized, but not stretched or compressed. Okay. So your sciatic nerve goes all the way down the back of your leg, essentially. And what we're trying to do with that is put it under a little bit of tension, and then take that tension off straight away. So you're going in and out of the movement. So it's quite dynamic. So we think about pulling toes up towards yourself, lifting your legs straight up. You feel a bit of a stretch in the back of the leg, but we're going to come straight down. So you're going to go all the way up, and toes up, and back down. And again. So that's a way to get that nerve. Yes, it stretches through your hamstring as well, but it particularly stretches through or mobilizes that nerve. Okay, so that's another good way of doing that. If we're then to come into some adductor stuff, so groin muscles. We'll do some basic things first. So where where you're sitting up nice and tall again, and thinking about really lengthening through those groins by pushing down gently on those knees as far as you can, trying to get down towards the ground. So some of you will probably be better than me. And again, 3 or 4 seconds is fine, and then backing off. If you again find that easy, if we want to make this more of a combined movement, we can think about doing some work through those adductors while then adding in some thoracic rotation. So again, sitting up nice and tall, rotating as far as you can, while we're also keeping those adductors down. And then swapping to opposite side again. So same thing. And something like a side lunge is also another good variation from an adductor point of view, where we're leaning into the movement and stretching through here. And then same thing opposite side. So keeping both feet on the ground, not leaning your body anyway, it's just staying nice and neutral. All the movement is happening at those hips. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it from a upper leg point of view. If we come down into lower leg, I'll go through some calf stretches with you now, which are really important for runners, because soleus, that muscle down here, generates a lot of the force when you're running. And I'll go through some stuff around perineal, so the outside of your calves. So because a lot of people are in lockdown at the moment, people might be running on different surfaces than they're used to. And your perineals are really important in terms of stabilizing your foot. So they're on the outside of that shin, and they can get a little bit tight from being used in ways they're not used to. So if we start with calf, we're going to come into a normal calf stretch. So most people probably know this, where you have one foot in front of the other. The back leg is the one I'm stretching. I'm going to keep that in back knee straight, back heel on the ground, and really stretch into it. Again, just go for 4 or 5 seconds, and then relax and take the pressure off. And go again. That's your normal calf stretch you're probably used to. Okay. It's important to also stretch soleus. So that's that muscle. Calf muscle is a little bit lower. So you can come in closer to the wall. Again, you're keeping the back heel on the ground, but this time you're bending the back leg. You should feel that stretch a little bit lower. Go down through here, almost into that Achilles. So what we're going to do is go for 4 or 5 second holds through there. Now, if you prefer to do calf stretch on the bottom step of the stairs or something, that's fine. But again, make sure you do a bent knee variation as well as the normal straight leg one. Okay. And what I would normally do after doing that, there are 2 muscle stretches or muscle flexibility stretches, if we're going to call them that. What we want to do then is actually mobilize through that ankle. So it's this movement that is important for running. So that ankle dorsiflexion, pulling up the foot, ankle, and toes. So what we're going to do is actually have the front foot now, is the one that's going to be doing the work. We're going to keep the heel of the front foot on the ground, bringing that knee in to touch the wall, and then come back up. So again, this isn't a stretch now. This is more to get the ankle joint movement. If you feel that in your calves, they probably need a little bit more work. And again, you can do that with the foam roller if you want to. Then do your dynamic stretching that we were just doing, and then do some of this. So what I would say with the knee to wall, in terms of how far you need to be away from the wall, it's a bit of trial and error. So starting nice and close, get to a point where you're like, that's pretty easy when you can touch the wall comfortably. Come back a centimetre or 2 and try again until you get to a point where either I can't get my knee to the wall or that heel is lifting up. Okay, and go from there. Usually I do between 10 and 20 of those. There, you can go quick and nice and easy through those. So that's a really good way of loosening through the calf, stretching that muscle, and then mobilizing the joint that the muscle works on. Okay. If we then think about perineals, as I was saying, the side of that leg, so outside through here, I think the best way to loosen them is using a foam roller. So if we pop the roller underneath that leg, again, with rolling, you can either have the other leg on the ground to take some of the weight, or you can have that on top here. Whatever you're most comfortable with in terms of the amount of pressure on the area or how much work your arms are having to do. But you can play around with it. And what I would aim for here is between, when we're foam rolling, you're looking to aim for about 30 seconds to 60 seconds on each tight area. And the more often you do you're foam rolling, the better. So you're looking for kind of most days, so at least kind of 5 days a week to see the benefits, particularly if you are running or training a lot. So that's probably the best way to loosen out that outside of the shin. And then the other thing that I would do very regularly, or advise people to do, is rolling through the foot itself. So the foot's often neglected by people because they don't see it as a muscle, but that's your one contact with the ground. Okay, so I have this foam roller, just it's smaller and handier, but you can use something like a tennis ball, a peanut ball, whatever you have is absolutely fine. Or if you don't have any of those, you can use a normal roller. I just find this is a little bit more effective. So all you're doing is trying to roll through the sole of that foot into that plantar fascia, nice and gently. What you're looking to do, so if I turn to the side, you want to roll from big toe back to the heel. You don't need to roll any further forwards or any further backwards. You want to put a little bit of pressure so that you feel like you are actually loosening out that area, but you don't need to be forcing this or putting huge pressure on the area either. And again, we'll do that on both sides. For me, in terms of mobility, I have a habit of working from head and spine down, but there's absolutely nothing to stop you starting in plantar fascia, doing caps and working back up. I just tend to like having somewhat of a systematic way of thinking about it so that I cover all areas. But what you can also do is, as I said earlier, try a couple of things like this and then see what you find most challenging, see what you find most difficult, and work on those areas. Or if you have a physio yourself or a coach or someone like that who can help you in terms of determining what you need to do or areas you personally need to work on yourself, then that's even better if you can have some input that way. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to show you a couple of interesting combined movements now. So one will be a little bit of a lunge variation. We're trying to make it a little bit more challenging for you now. So you're coming into a normal lunge. So we're going to start at 90-90-ish. We're going to come all the way down, and then you're going to rotate to one side, all the way up and out. Back to the start, rotate to the opposite side. So that's what I call our easy version. If we take a bigger step forward and then lift this leg off the ground, again, hands forward through here. And again, you're going to rotate to one side and then swap to the opposite side. That's slightly more challenging. And then again, you can swap legs and go again this way, rotating to one side and rotating to the opposite side. So what we're trying to do with something like that is combine the movements, because obviously running is a whole body exercise. So we need to be able to move muscles and joints combined with each other, not just have good flexibility in one easy static way of doing things. And then the last thing we're going to do before I go to the questions and answers is a Wrestle Stretch. So if you want to use pillows for this, please do. You're lying on your side. We're going to do like a variation of a quad stretch with the bottom leg, so that you're going to hold that leg behind you with your upper hand. This leg is going to relax onto the ground, or if you have a pillow or block, you can pop it here. And you're going to think about opening up your chest towards the ceiling. And all you're going to do is pull that leg with the upper arm back as far as you can. Try and get this leg to rest onto the ground. And try and slow the breathing down. And breathe into the stretch. And then again, that's one that I would normally do for a minute or two at a time and try and actually breathe into it to get a little bit more range. And obviously we do that on both sides. But again, because I've been talking for ages, I am probably going to go to the questions and answers now. Everyone's happy with that? Okay, so that's most of the practical session done. I'm going to go into the questions and answers. So, and then if there's anything else, we can go through that as we go. Okay, so someone was asking, at what age does mobility exercising become essential? And I'm afraid I'm going to give you a little bit of a what will seem like a cop-out answer here, but it's not really about age for me anyway. You need optimal mobility to be able to perform whatever movement or whatever your sport is at any age. And there are some people who are really young with not fantastic mobility that probably need a bit of work. And similarly, there are people at the other end of the spectrum who, although they might be a little bit older, have actually excellent mobility. So I don't think it's age that determines whether mobility is essential or not. It's more about how well you can move yourself, if that makes sense. On a similar vein to that, someone has asked, how much mobility work should a 13-year-old be doing? Again, I think here the important factor is not the age. So for me, it depends on your current level of flexibility and what you're aiming to do. So you're trying to get a balance between that. So if you're really, really flexible, is mobility the thing you need to be focusing on? Probably not. But maybe you need to be looking at more of the strength and control things. Whereas if you're someone who is really not very mobile in a particular area, then yes, it's absolutely appropriate to be doing some mobility, but it should be gentle, and it shouldn't be, especially at 13 years of age, I think athletics should be very much fun, and you should be more exploring movements and things rather than worrying too much about following a strict mobility routine. So hopefully that answers that question. Someone else has asked, can too much mobility negatively impact running performance? And the short answer is yes. So again, as I've said it quite a few times, there has to be a balance between how much mobility you have, how mobile you are at a given joint, and how well you can control that movement. And as I said, the control varies when you're doing different things or at different speeds or dependent on fatigue and things like that. So yes, mobility can be positive and can improve performance if used well, but yes, too much mobility can negatively impact running performance if you don't have control for it. And also it's been shown that doing a lot of static stretching, so long holds 30 to 60 seconds before competition, can actually reduce your performance, particularly in things like explosive and sprint events. Okay. And any tips for veteran athletes who sit too much? Well, sitting can cause certain areas to get tight, and then that can be an issue when you run because you need to be in a different posture. I would say you need to focus on your back particularly and your hips. So they're the two areas that will commonly get quite tight when you are sitting. So your mid back and your lower back, again, some of the mobility things we've gone through there hopefully will help with that. And the same with your hip. I would focus on things like your hip flexor and your hamstrings. You want to be able to stretch and control both of those, definitely. Something similar again is what to do about stiffness in your lower back. So again, for me, I think you need to find out what's causing your lower back stiffness. So if it's something like the previous question where it is excessive sitting, then I would try and limit the sitting if you can, but if not, you're trying to do the same type of things I was just talking about there. So some self-release with a peanut ball or with the ball itself can be quite good into your lower back and your gluteals. And then adding in some of the mobility exercises that we went through there. Ideally doing those kind of things daily or most days a week, so 5 times a week, is better than doing one big mobility session once a week, because you'll see the benefits maintained a little bit better. But again, you need to find out what the cause of your lower back stiffness is and make sure there isn't another underlying issue there, because sometimes you can feel stiff while actually being mobile, and the issue might be more of a control at end range kind of thing. So you need to ascertain why you're getting stiffness through your lower back. Again, something similar, someone was looking for the best exercises to use for sciatica. I think I went through some of those. So the straight leg raise, where you're actively moving and mobilizing that nerve down the back of the leg, is really useful. But again, most important thing here is that you don't hold that, because nerves do not like to be compressed. You want to be moving through range and backing off straight away. Again, if someone is suffering from sciatica, you ideally need a physio assessment so you can get the exercises that are appropriate to you. Because neural tissue is quite sensitive, so you need to be careful. But if I was going through any exercises, it would be the sciatic nerve sliders I was talking about there. Making sure you're addressing your lower back mobility and your hip and glute self-release, making sure to stay away from the nerve itself. Staying with hips then. Someone has asked how they should best loosen their hips and run faster. So I've broken that into 2 questions because I don't necessarily know that they're correlated. So the self-release around your hips with a ball or a peanut ball would be useful. Some mobility work like those 1990s and the rotations that we did, and some band distraction. So that's where we do that in a lunge position with a really big, thick power band tied to something really sturdy, where you're doing a little bit of a lateral distraction. Can actually be really useful for opening up hips. And to run faster, then I suppose that may be related to loosening your hips, but it's likely not the only factor. I think if you can optimize your mobility and your strength and control, try and stay injury free, so you actually have more training days, more time to get faster. That's important, and monitoring your load there would be huge for me. We've only a few more questions to get through. Perfect. So someone has asked, what are the best exercises for running after knee injury? So again, I'm going to give you a bit of a vague answer, I'm afraid, but that completely depends on what the knee injury was and what you're looking to get back to doing. Okay, so definitely recommend that you seek individual advice from a physio if you haven't done that already. And if I was going to give you some general guidelines, I would say that you want to ensure you have sufficient strength around the knee, so things like your hamstrings and your quads, and some control, some proprioception, so single leg balance with a bent knee, that type of thing. But you also want to make sure you have adequate hip control, so some gluteal work would be very useful, so your knee isn't falling inwards. And then looking at your foot and ankle and calf strength particularly, so things like bent knee calf raises, and looking at your foot and ankle balance and stability would be useful. But as I say from the start, it totally depends on what the knee injury is, so I would say seek medical advice on that one. And somewhat similar for someone looking for tips on shin splints. A lot of people have been running on harnesses during the quarantine. So for me, yes, that is potentially a factor, but is it the only factor? What I would look at is, again, seek personal advice for that, because there are lots of different things that fall into that shin splints category. For me, I would look at training load. So has your mileage changed? Have you been running more often? Have you changed anything else other than the surface? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, then I would address them first. If not, you need to be careful, because if it is only a surface thing, there are a couple of things we can do, but you need to be careful that stress fractures actually fall into the category of shin splints. So if the pain is getting worse over time, you should stop running and definitely get physio advice from there. Normally, shin pain is like a biomechanical overload, so because you can't absorb or distribute forces well. So therefore, like normally, calf strengthening, as I was saying, particularly around soleus, is really important here, to be able to absorb that force when you're landing, particularly on the hard surfaces. But that's something that's going to take like a minimum 6 to 8 weeks to see any difference in. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more in the short term, doing a little bit of extra foam rolling through the calf, so breaking your calf up into 3 areas. So foam rolling through the top inside, top outside, and then that soleus, that bit in the center lower down, would be useful. And then doing some foam rolling through plantar fascia as well would be good. There's someone who was asking about mobility for throwing events. So obviously this is somewhat different to running, but again, it will kind of be event specific even within throws. So a javelin thrower will need increased mobility through their shoulder, particularly into that external rotation, which might be quite different for a shot putter. But again, the principles are the same. You need to look at the movement that you are doing, look at what areas are moving a lot, and look at what areas need to be stable for you to produce the force required. I would say mobility of the spine is key to controlling the forces, transferring forces that you're generating from your legs through to your arm for throwing. So again, it comes back to, you want something like javelin, you need huge external rotation range at that shoulder, but you also need to be able to move through that thoracic spine and hips very well, but you need to be able to control the movement. So it's about increasing mobility, but also increasing your control if you change how much movement you have. And then I think the very last one I have here is, from an injury prevention perspective, when is it best to perform strengthening exercises? So again, that's a whole other talk in itself, but from to answer it relatively quickly, for me, and from an injury prevention point of view, it doesn't really matter when you do the strengthening exercises. What matters is that you do them in the first place at all, and that you do them correctly, and the parameters you're using are appropriate to what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to increase strength, you need to have, a reason that it needs to be reasonably difficult. So a reasonable load that on what you're trying to do, so external weight or otherwise, but the reps need to be low. Whereas if you're looking at control, you need to be maintaining control throughout that entire movement or exercise. So they would be the biggest things for me. So that when you actually fit them in is a personal preference. And if you have a coach, that would be who I would speak to about that. So see where your strengthening exercises can fit in with your runs and with your sessions. People are totally different. So take a bit of trial and error to see what suits you best, because some people will like to have the strengthening exercises the day before a session. They'll feel a little bit more switched on or activated that day, whereas other people will feel quite tired. So have a play around it where it fits into your schedule. From a literature point of view, there's nothing to say it's best to do it on the same day or a different day than your sessions are running. Everyone will have a different preference. But again, the most important thing for me is that you are actually doing some strengthening as well as some mobility. Perfect.
Brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic, Ciara. Thanks very much. I'm conscious. I'm conscious you have another meeting at 2 o'clock. So I think you've covered very much most of the questions that have come in there, really. But I suppose just 2 quick fire questions as such. There's someone just wondering, they currently do 20 minutes of stretching per day, and would you advise that they replace this with a daily mobility workout, or should that be in addition to the stretching they're currently doing?
So it would depend on what stretching you're doing. So if you're doing 20 minutes of static stretching, I would say yes, I would probably change that, unless you are seeing significant benefits from that. So I suppose it's something for you to think about, and everyone's individual. But from my point of view, I would say once you come out of lockdown, you're probably not going to have a huge amount of time to add in another 20 minutes of mobility. So I would probably try and change it. Think about what exercises you feel that you're already doing that you get benefit from. Maybe keep some of those static things in, but try and incorporate some of the mobility stuff we've gone through here. And as I say, try and also increase or introduce a little bit of end range strengthening is useful. If you find that you've been doing static stretching for ages and you haven't been seeing benefits, then I would change it up a little bit. And as I say, make sure you're doing a little bit of strengthening. And if you're not sure on that, seek guidance on it rather than trying to go it alone.
Perfect. And then just the last question to finish up, and I know you have touched on this, any suggestions for knee mobility to counter against runner's knee?
Well, that's an interesting one again that I could speak on for ages. I would more be looking at foot and ankle mobility, hip mobility, but again, usually with something like runner's knee, it comes down to control more than mobility. So yes, like doing a little bit of foam rolling and stretching through quads will be useful, particularly if you have a little bit of pain at the moment. That can help alleviate symptoms a little bit. But I think you need to focus on quad strength, particularly eccentric quad strength, but also pelvic control. So having a stable pelvis, having some good strong glute med so that your knee isn't falling in when you're running, so that you don't have excess forces going through the knee. And again, maybe looking at something like soleus, so that in your calf, so bent knee calf raises, things like that, would probably be more where I would look. So I would focus, yes, on quad flexibility a little bit, but more with the foam roller than with some static stretching. And I would really look at your control of the joints above and below, essentially.
Perfect. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So look here, that's absolutely brilliant. And I think I speak for everyone there when I say thanks very much for facilitating that for us on your lunch breaks. It was absolutely brilliant. And I suppose for anyone that's there, we have this webinar recorded and we will be releasing it on our YouTube channel over the next day or two. So Ciara, thanks very much for that, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks guys. See ya.
Bye.